in getting some of those checks because of glitches involving H&R Block and some of the tax preparers like TurboTax. The Treasury not able to get that direct deposit out through those tax preparers, which serve as a middleman in between the taxpayer and the IRS in some cases. Also, some glitches involving dependent children as well. But the storyline here from the Washington Post is this will affect millions of Americans who will now see delays.
So they have made it official. There are several states that are going to send out stimulus relief. The checks will be coming out before the end of the year, and you can claim up to $2,000 in extra stimulus money. Right now, residents in 4 states are set to claim payments during and ranging from $75 up to $1,700. This is awesome news as the crisis is still continuing to affect millions of people. It is time that lawmakers start to realize that they need to take action for the people. It starts in cities like Chicago. Even in states like Idaho, Pennsylvania, and Hawaii have each given payments for locals that must be claimed by next week. The states are offering relief in the form of tax rebates and one-time inflation relief checks. And since the crisis, dozens of states have already offered creative ways to put cash back into the wallets of their residents. States like West Virginia are providing housing, related funding at homeowners, and facing financial hardship. They're here to help. The Chicago Fund is partnership between the city and the local nonprofits. It aims to give $500 checks to residents who have difficulty accessing federal crisis money, and also recipients must be at least 18 years old to claim this. But it's important to note that to be considered for the payment, Chicago residents must submit an application online first. The applications all opened on October 1st and will close on December 31st. Idaho is offering 2 rebates. The amount of each payment is different, but the qualifications and process to get them are the same. The amounts are based on the most recent approved 2020 tax return information on file at the time the rebates were issued. Additionally, the governor signed a law in September, allotting residents $500 million into special session rebates. The state of Pennsylvania's tax rebate program is aimed at helping older and disabled Pennsylvanians still recovering from the crisis. So while deposits were first issued on July 1st, residents may apply for the program until January. The maximum standard rebate is $650, but some homeowners may qualify for a supplemental rebate of up to $1,000. Renters and homeowners who make $8,000 or less also should get a $650 check. And Hawaii sent out its first-time tax refund to residents in August, but they're still going to be sent out to the end of the year. Hawaii's Department of Taxation said the checks were sent during the last week of August, but will be issued in phases. Residents making less than $100,000 annually will make $300 rebates, while workers earning between $100,000 and $200,000 are in line for $100. And for those who do not file an income return, must do so by January and December 31st. So prize bonus checks of $600 are still going out to a group of Americans before the new year, but there's specific criteria that must be met to qualify for the check. The bonuses come courtesy of the city of Denver, who decided to give the residents $600 checks to combat its staffing shortage. The city council approved the bonus and plans to fast-track the cash to most city workers by Friday. According to city officials, the bill stipulates the bonuses are an appreciation for their dedication and service in 2022, when staffing shortages continue to impact departments and agencies across the country, often at the expense of the city workforce. Those who had to work in person at least half of the time also received pay. And according to the city council, around 8,300 of city employees are eligible for the additional cash. To qualify, you must have been continuously employed by the city since at least September 30th of this year and also still be qualifying for December 30th stimulus checks. It's great to see that Joe Biden is finally doing what it takes for the people, and sending out stimulus payments is one thing he must do very fast.
Many of your editors and close friends have asked that before you return, you ask how many Article 3 judges have been approved for lifetime appointments by this Congress. The definitive answer today, authoritative answer, is 97. 97. 126 were approved by committee. So we have another 29 which could be called even in the closing minutes if there's an agreement on the floor. But we're proud of the 97. In comparison, in the first 2 years of my friend Barack Obama's presidency, 43. The first 2 years of the Trump presidency, 85. So we've done an extraordinary job in the Judiciary Committee with an evenly split committee. And it called for bipartisan cooperation many times. And we've been able to bring that cooperation to the floor because We have diversity in the ranks of these new judges, and every single one of these judges was judged well qualified by the American Bar Association. That was not the case during the last 4 years. There's more work to be done when it comes to the judges that are held over. We'll do our best to move on it in an expeditious way. One last point I want to make to you, this omnibus bill has many, many, many provisions. There's one in particular that I'm proud of that Senator Bill Cassidy and I put together. Have you ever bought anything on the internet? I'll bet you have. What's the likelihood that what you bought was stolen or counterfeit? Unfortunately, it's a very high likelihood. Now we're going to have disclosure of the actual sellers on the internet.
The IRS has released some very important announcements. Millions of you guys can expect to receive some bonus relief payments this month.
And by the way, there are a lot of jobs coming to people that you're going to need to train up people, thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Everybody knew and you heard from my secretary a little bit earlier, America's falling behind in infrastructure.
But there is a deadline. Taxpayers have just a few weeks left to claim this money. And so, here is some big news. The IRS is sending refunds to more than 1 million Americans who filed their taxes late in the early days of the crisis. But there is a new deadline. The agency has announced that taxpayers have until September 30th to take advantage of this new relief. Typically, people who file their taxes late without requesting an extension can expect to pay penalties of up to 25% of the amount of taxes that they owe. For 2019 and 2020, however, the agency is suspending taxes or the penalty for those taxes for late filers. Taxpayers who have already paid a fine will automatically be given refunds, the IRS said. And more than 1.6 million people are set to receive refunds or credits totaling $1 billion. This is an average of $700 per person. Although some of you guys may get more and some may get less. The IRS said taxpayers who have already filed their returns don't need to do anything. If you've been notified of a fine but have not yet paid it, the penalty will be erased, and while those who have already paid a penalty will receive a refund or credit, most of the refunds will be delivered by the end of this month. So that's some good news to look forward to. And according to the IRS, taxpayers who have yet to file returns for 2019 and 2020 can still have penalties forgiven, as long as their returns are filed by September 30th, 2022. That gives late filers just over 2 weeks to wrap up outstanding returns. Now the effort is to move to help struggling taxpayers affected by the crisis, and the plan can also help the agency, which is struggling to dig itself out of a massive backlog of unprocessed tax returns. In a notice, the IRS said the crisis had an unprecedented effect on the tax agency, highlighting the agency's roles in distributing stimulus payments and taking other steps to help taxpayers weather the crisis. Dropping late filing penalties could also benefit the IRS by helping the agency focus on whittling down its backlog of tax paperwork and returning to normal for the 2023 tax season. Several House Democrats are facing tough re-election bids, as well as one congressional hopeful, and they are defending their party's expansion of the IRS that was included in the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which does little to immediately address inflation in America. The measure, backed by Joe Manchin, successfully passed through Democrat-controlled chambers last month and was signed by President Biden. It will grant an $80 billion boost to the IRS over a 10-year period. The billions of dollars for the IRS from the measure will go towards filing 87,000 IRS positions, Social Security beneficiaries. Rising inflation also means more retirees will end up being taxed on their benefits, and when Congress introduced Social Security taxation in the 1980s, it set income thresholds and avoided indexing them for inflation. On the positive side of this, retirees whose costs are rising more slowly than the official inflation figures will benefit from the latest cost of living adjustments, according to the U.S. Labor Department.